Captain Ray Merritt was a tall man in his early 50s. He had been working as a police officer in a small town for more than 25 years. People knew him as a strict but fair man. He believed strongly in following the rules, and he thought the law was the most important thing. In his mind, the world was clear: there were good people and bad people. And he often believed he was the one who knew who was who. It was a warm Friday evening when Captain Merritt was on patrol. The sun was just setting, and the streets were quiet. He enjoyed these times because the town felt peaceful. Suddenly, he saw a black car speeding slightly above the limit on Main Street. Merritt switched on his siren and pulled the car over near the old gas station. The driver of the car was Agent Alana Pierce. She worked for the federal government. Alana was calm and confident as she stepped out of her car. She wore a neat suit, and her badge hung on a chain around her neck. She was used to dealing with tense situations but always stayed respectful and professional. Merritt walked up to the car window and looked at her. "Do you know how fast you were going?" he asked. Alana nodded. "I apologize, Captain. I was a little over the limit. I have an important meeting to attend, and I was running late." Merritt frowned but decided to check her license and registration. As he looked at her documents, he noticed her badge. It was official and clear: federal agent. Still, something about the situation made Merritt uneasy. He wasn't sure why, but his instincts told him to be careful. "Step out of the car, please," Merritt said firmly. Alana raised her eyebrows but obeyed. She stepped out slowly, keeping her hands visible. Merritt looked at her carefully. He noticed she was calm, but he also noticed that she was black. For a moment, his mind raced. He remembered stories he had heard in the department, warnings about people who did not follow the law, stories filled with fear and suspicion. It was not fair, but those thoughts had been with him for many years. "Are you carrying any weapons?" Merritt asked. Alana nodded again. "Yes, Captain. I am authorized to carry a firearm." Merritt sighed and reached for his handcuffs. "Why are you handcuffing me?" Alana asked, her voice steady but firm. "Just a routine safety measure," Merritt replied, trying to keep his tone neutral. "Please don't make this difficult." Alana's eyes showed surprise, but she did not resist. Merritt clicked the handcuffs on her wrists. People nearby began to stare. Some took out their phones to record the scene. "Captain Merritt, this is unnecessary," Alana said quietly. "I have cooperated fully. I am a federal agent." Merritt looked at her and then at the growing crowd. His heart beat faster. He felt pressure from years of tension, from his own fears, and from a world that seemed to be changing too fast. "Wait here," he said, turning his back to her. Alana stood still, breathing calmly. She knew that this moment was bigger than just a traffic stop. It was about respect, fairness, and truth. Inside his patrol car, Merritt's hands trembled slightly as he called his superior. He told the story but left out some details. He did not know what would happen next, but he felt the weight of a mistake he had already made. The video of the handcuffing was already circulating on social media by the time the sun fully set. People wrote angry comments, shared their opinions, and some even called for Merritt's suspension. Back at the police station, Merritt sat alone in a small room, staring at the screen of his computer. The faces of his colleagues, his family, and the community he had served flashed in his mind. Was he still the man they thought he was? Meanwhile, Alana was released after the incident. She chose not to press charges immediately, but she knew she would not forget this moment. Later that night, she looked at the stars and thought about the man who had handcuffed her. There was pain there, but also confusion. She wondered about his story, about the reasons behind his actions. What she did not know was that their lives were more connected than either of them imagined. The next morning, the town woke up to a storm. News about Captain Ray Merritt handcuffing a federal agent, Alana Pierce, had spread everywhere. People were talking, posting, and arguing. Some said Merritt was just doing his job, while many others felt he had crossed a line. The video of the handcuffing was being watched thousands of times on social media. At the police department, tension filled the air. Captain Merritt's phone did not stop ringing. Reporters wanted statements. The mayor's office called for an explanation. Merritt sat at his desk, rubbing his tired eyes. He wanted to believe he had done the right thing, but doubts crept into his mind. Meanwhile, Alana was in her apartment, preparing for her next assignment. She was calm but determined. The incident had shaken her, but it also made her stronger. She did not want to cause trouble, but she could not ignore what happened. Alana thought about the man who handcuffed her. She wondered about his life, his beliefs, and why he had treated her that way. There was anger inside her, but also sadness. She was a federal agent, trained to protect people, not be treated like a criminal during a simple traffic stop. That evening, Alana sat down with her laptop and began searching through public records. She wanted to understand more about Captain Merritt. Her fingers moved quickly as she typed his name into different databases. What she found surprised her. There were old news articles about Merritt and another man, a sheriff from years ago. The sheriff's name was James Pierce. Alana's heart skipped a beat. James Pierce was her father. She stared at the screen in disbelief. She had never told anyone about her father's work in law enforcement, or about the painful story her family had lived through. Alana's father had been a good man, someone who had loved his family and worked hard to keep his community safe. But decades ago, something terrible had happened, something that had destroyed his career and broken her family apart. Why was Captain Merritt connected to her father? The thought confused her, but she knew one thing: she needed answers. The next day, Alana contacted her supervisor at the federal agency. She explained the traffic stop and her discovery about Merritt's past. Her supervisor listened carefully. "If what you say is true, this could change a lot," he said. "But be careful. Some people do not want the past to be uncovered." Alana agreed. She was ready to find the truth, no matter what. Back in the small town, Captain Merritt faced growing criticism. His colleagues whispered behind his back. Some avoided him, while others defended him quietly. The police chief called Merritt into his office. "Ray, this situation is serious," he said. "We have to conduct a formal investigation. You will need to explain your actions and your history." Merritt nodded slowly. He knew the investigation could ruin his career. But he also felt a deep fear, a fear he had hidden for years. That night, Merritt sat alone on the porch of his house. The sky was clear, and the stars twinkled above. He thought about the past, about the young man he once was, full of hope and trust. Memories of his partnership with Sheriff James Pierce returned to him. They had worked side by side, protecting the town and fighting crime. But the friendship did not last. Merritt remembered the day everything changed, the day he had made a choice that would haunt him forever. Years ago, James Pierce had uncovered corruption inside the sheriff's office. Some officers were taking bribes and covering up crimes. Pierce wanted to expose them and bring justice. Merritt was there. He saw the truth but was afraid. He chose silence. He did not stand with his friend. Instead, he turned away. Because of Merritt's betrayal, Pierce was forced out of the force. His reputation was destroyed, and his family suffered deeply. Merritt had buried the guilt, but it never left him. Now, facing Alana Pierce, the daughter of the man he betrayed, Merritt felt trapped. The next morning, Alana returned to the police station. She asked to speak with Merritt directly. The captain looked surprised but agreed. In a small, quiet room, they sat facing each other. Alana spoke first. "I know about your past with my father. Merritt's face tightened. He said nothing. Alana continued, her voice steady. He was a good man. You betrayed him. Merritt's eyes filled with pain. I made mistakes, he admitted quietly. Things I wish I could change. Alana listened. She was angry, but she also felt sadness for the man in front of her. This isn't just about the traffic stop, she said. It's about truth, justice, and what we do when we face our past. Merritt nodded slowly. I want to make things right. But I don't know how. Alana stood up. You start by telling the truth. As she walked away, Merritt watched her go. He realized that the story was far from over. Outside, the town was watching too, waiting for the next chapter to unfold. After her meeting with Captain Merritt, Agent Alana Pierce couldn't stop thinking about the man she had just confronted. His face had shown years of regret, but there was still a wall between them, an invisible barrier built from silence and secrets. That night, Alana sat alone in her small apartment. The soft hum of the city outside was quiet compared to the storm in her mind. She opened a dusty box she kept in the corner, a box filled with old family photos, letters, and forgotten memories. She wasn't sure what she was looking for, but something inside told her to keep digging. She pulled out a photo from years ago. It was black and white, slightly torn at the edges. Two men stood side by side, smiling confidently in their police uniforms. One was young James Pierce, her father. The other was Ray Merritt. Her fingers trembled as she stared at the picture. The two men looked like best friends, partners in every sense. The kind of bond that only grows stronger with time. How did things change so much, she whispered to herself. The next morning, Alana went to the town library. She hoped to find old newspaper articles or records that might explain the story behind the photo. The library was quiet, with shelves filled with thick books and faded newspapers. A friendly librarian named Mrs. Walters greeted her and helped her search through the archives. Hours passed as Alana flipped through yellowed pages. Then, she found a small article from 25 years ago. The headline read, Sheriff's Office Faces Corruption Scandal. The article told the story of James Pierce, a sheriff who had tried to expose illegal activities within his own department. The corruption involved bribery, theft, and covering up serious crimes. Pierce had stood up for what was right, but instead of support, he faced betrayal. The report mentioned a partner who refused to back him up, a partner who stayed silent while the department turned against Pierce. That partner was Captain Ray Merritt. Alana felt a wave of sadness and anger. Her father had paid a high price for his courage. His career ended, and his family suffered. She had grown up with questions but never known the full truth. As she left the library, Alana thought about confronting Merritt again. This time, not just about the traffic stop, but about everything. She knew it would be difficult. Merritt had his own pride and secrets. But the truth needed to come out. Back at the police station, Merritt felt the weight of the past pressing down on him. His office was cluttered with old files, awards, and memories from a life he once believed was honorable. His phone rang. It was the chief, reminding him about the upcoming investigation. Merritt sighed and looked at the photo on his desk, the same one Alana had found. It showed two young men, full of hope. He remembered the day his world changed forever. 25 years ago, he and James Pierce had been partners, close friends who trusted each other. When Pierce discovered the corruption, he had expected Merritt to stand with him. Instead, Merritt had turned away, afraid of losing everything. That fear had destroyed a friendship and broken a family. Merritt had buried the guilt deep inside, but it never left. Now, faced with Alana Pierce, the daughter of the man he betrayed, Merritt knew the past was no longer hidden. Later that afternoon, Alana returned to the police station. She asked to speak with Merritt again. This time, she came prepared. She carried the photo, the newspaper article, and a folder of records. Merritt's face turned pale when he saw the evidence. "Why did you keep this secret?" Alana asked quietly. "Why did you let my father suffer alone?" Merritt looked down. "I was afraid. I wanted to protect myself." Alana shook her head. "You destroyed a man's life. You broke a family." Merritt nodded slowly. "I know. And I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want to make things right." Alana's eyes softened. She saw the pain behind his words, the regret he carried for so long. "This isn't just about me," she said. "It's about justice. About making sure the truth is heard." Merritt agreed. "I'll cooperate with the investigation. I'll tell everything." As she left the room, Alana felt a mix of emotions: sadness for her father, hope for the future, and a determination to see justice done. Outside the police station, the town continued to buzz with news of the incident. Some people supported Alana, while others defended Merritt. But everyone knew the story was far from over. That night, Alana visited her father's grave. The cemetery was peaceful under the moonlight. She knelt beside the headstone, tracing the letters with her fingers. "Dad," she whispered, "I'm going to find the truth. I promise." The wind rustled through the trees, as if carrying a silent answer. Back at his house, Merritt sat alone, staring at the same photo of him and James Pierce. He whispered a prayer, hoping for forgiveness that might never come. The past had caught up with them both. And the next chapter was about to begin. The morning sun peeked through the thin curtains of Captain Ray Merritt's living room. Outside, the birds chirped softly, but inside, a storm of emotions brewed. Merritt sat quietly at his kitchen table, hands folded tightly, staring at the cup of coffee he hadn't touched. His mind was filled with memories, regrets, and the heavy burden of the truth he had kept locked inside for years. Just yesterday, Agent Alana Pierce had confronted him with facts that could destroy everything he had built: a photograph, old newspaper articles, and the painful story of her father, James Pierce. Merritt felt exposed, vulnerable, and afraid. But beneath all that fear, there was something else: an aching need to be honest, finally. Meanwhile, Alana was preparing for a meeting that could change everything. She was determined to bring the truth to light, not just for herself, but for her father's memory and for justice. She knew Merritt held the key to the past, but she also knew that hearing his side would not be easy. At the police station, Merritt and Alana met in a small conference room. The air was thick with silence before Merritt finally spoke. "I'll tell you everything," he said quietly, his voice shaky. "Not because I want forgiveness, but because the truth deserves to be heard." Alana nodded, encouraging him to continue. Merritt took a deep breath and began his story. "We were young back then. I was proud to serve with James Pierce. We believed in protecting the town, in doing what was right. But things started to change. Corruption grew inside the sheriff's office. Some officers took bribes. Crimes were covered up. James wanted to fight it. He wanted to clean the department." Merritt paused, looking down at his hands. "I was scared. I thought if I stood with him, I'd lose everything: my job, my family's respect, my life as I knew it. So I stayed silent. I pretended I didn't see what was happening." Alana listened carefully, her eyes fixed on Merritt's face. She saw the pain there, the weight of guilt that had haunted him all these years. James Pierce had trusted Merritt as a friend and partner. When Merritt refused to support him, Pierce was left alone. The department turned against him, accusing him of lies and betrayal. He lost his badge, his career, and much of his dignity. "I'm sorry," Merritt whispered. "I betrayed a man who believed in justice. And I betrayed you and your family, too." Alana felt tears prick her eyes, but she stayed strong. "Why didn't you tell the truth back then? Why keep it hidden?" Merritt's voice broke. "Fear. Pride. Foolishness. I thought I could protect myself by hiding. But all I did was cause pain. The room fell silent as the two faced each other, one carrying the pain of betrayal, the other carrying the burden of loss. Alana finally spoke. Thank you for telling me. This is only the beginning. The town needs to know. Justice needs to be served. Merritt nodded slowly. I will cooperate with the investigation. I want to make things right. Over the next few days, Merritt handed over old files and shared everything he remembered. The police department reopened cases linked to the corruption. The community began to understand the truth behind the stories they had heard for years. Alana's role was not only to seek justice but also to help heal a broken town. She held meetings with community leaders, talked with families affected by the corruption, and worked hard to rebuild trust. Meanwhile, Merritt faced criticism and lost support from some of his colleagues. But a few still stood by him, believing that admitting mistakes was the first step toward real change. One afternoon, Merritt visited a small cafe downtown. As he sat alone, an older woman approached him. I knew James Pierce, she said softly. He was a good man. Thank you for telling the truth now. Merritt smiled sadly. I'm trying to make up for what I did. The woman nodded. It's never too late. Back at the police station, Alana prepared for a public hearing. The town was eager to hear the full story, and she knew this was her chance to honor her father and demand justice. On the day of the hearing, the room was filled with people, citizens, officers, reporters. Everyone was quiet as Alana stepped forward. She spoke clearly and with purpose, telling the story of her father's fight against corruption, of Merritt's betrayal, and of the long path to truth and healing. The room was silent when she finished. Then, one by one, people began to speak, sharing their memories, their hopes for a better future. Captain Merritt took the stand next. His voice was steady but full of emotion as he admitted his mistakes and asked for forgiveness. The hearing ended with a call for reform in the police department and a promise to honor the memory of those who had fought for justice. Later that evening, Alana visited her father's grave again. The moonlight shone softly on the headstone as she whispered, "We're getting closer, Dad. Justice is coming." Merritt, watching from a distance, felt a strange sense of peace. The truth was finally out, and although the road ahead was uncertain, he hoped that one day, healing would come for them all. The days after the public hearing were busy and full of change. The town was buzzing with conversations about justice and truth. Many people felt hope, while others felt anger and confusion. For Captain Ray Merritt and Agent Alana Pierce, life was beginning to move in a new direction, but the journey was far from over. Merritt arrived at the police station earlier than usual. His steps were slower now, his usual confident walk replaced by quiet thoughtfulness. He knew many people no longer trusted him, and some openly blamed him. Yet, he also saw small signs of support and forgiveness. The investigation into the corruption continued. Old cases were reopened, and officers who had been silent for years finally began to speak out. The police department promised to change its ways. But Merritt knew that changing a system built on years of silence and fear would take time. Alana was busy with her own challenges. Her work with the federal agency was now under more scrutiny, and she faced tough questions about her recent confrontation with Merritt. Some people in her agency worried she was stirring up trouble. Others admired her courage. Despite the pressures, Alana kept going. She believed in her mission to uncover the truth, honor her father's legacy, and help heal the town. One afternoon, Merritt received a letter. It was from a woman named Helen, the widow of an officer who had worked with James Pierce. The letter thanked Merritt for finally telling the truth and expressed hope for a better future. Merritt read the letter slowly, feeling a mixture of sadness and relief. He wrote back, promising to do everything he could to help the town heal. At the same time, Alana found herself thinking about her family. The discovery of her father's story had opened old wounds but also created a space for healing. She decided to reach out to her mother, who had kept many painful memories silent for years. The phone call was difficult but necessary. Alana's mother spoke softly about the struggles they had faced and the strength it took to survive. They both cried, but with tears came understanding and forgiveness. Meanwhile, Merritt began attending community meetings. He listened more than he spoke, trying to understand the pain his actions had caused. Slowly, some townspeople began to see the man behind the uniform, a man trying to change. One evening, at a local cafe, Merritt and Alana met again. The conversation was honest and open, free from anger and blame. "I never wanted to hurt anyone," Merritt said quietly. "But I did. And now I have to live with that." Alana nodded. "We all make mistakes. What matters is what we do after." They talked about the future, the changes needed in the police department, the importance of trust, and the hope for healing. As the weeks passed, the town started to see real changes. New officers were hired with promises of fairness and respect. Training programs focused on honesty and community care. People began to come together, sharing stories and building new bonds. Alana received recognition for her work but remained humble. She knew the fight for justice was ongoing. One morning, Merritt visited James Pierce's grave. He placed a small flower on the headstone and whispered a promise. "I will do better. For you. For this town. For everyone who believes in justice." Alana watched from a distance, feeling a quiet hope. Though the past could not be changed, the future was still theirs to write. And this time, they would write it together. The small town slowly began to change. The air, once heavy with suspicion and pain, now carried a quiet hope. The truth had shaken the community, but it had also opened a path toward healing. Captain Ray Merritt found himself facing the hardest part of his journey, seeking forgiveness. It was not easy. Many people still remembered the past with anger and hurt. Some refused to speak to him. Others whispered behind his back. But Merritt did not give up. Every day, he tried to show that he was different. He listened carefully to those who had suffered, and he spoke honestly about his mistakes. He understood that words alone would not be enough. His actions had to prove his change. One afternoon, a group of community members invited Merritt to a meeting at the town hall. It was not an easy invitation. Some people were skeptical, but others believed in second chances. Merritt entered the room with a mixture of fear and hope. The faces around him showed a range of emotions: anger, sadness, but also curiosity. He stood up and began to speak. "I know I have hurt many of you," he said quietly. "I betrayed my friend, your friend, and I betrayed all of you by staying silent. I am truly sorry." There was silence in the room. Then, a woman in the front row stood up. She was Mrs. Walters, the librarian who had helped Alana at the beginning of her search. "Captain Merritt," she said, "it takes courage to admit when we are wrong. I see that you want to change. But healing will take time." Merritt nodded. "I understand. I am ready to do the work, no matter how long it takes." The meeting ended with a promise from the town to support changes in the police department and to work together for a better future. Meanwhile, Agent Alana Pierce was also facing her own challenges. Her relationship with her mother had grown stronger after their honest conversation. Alana had begun to understand the sacrifices her mother had made to protect the family. At work, Alana pushed for reforms that would prevent the kind of corruption that destroyed her father's career. She held workshops about trust and respect between officers and the community. People started to listen. One evening, Alana received a call from Merritt. He wanted to meet and talk. They met at the cafe where they had spoken before. Merritt looked tired but determined. "Thank you for giving me a chance," he said. "Your courage has made a difference, not just for the town, but for me." Alana smiled softly. We are both learning. Healing is not easy, but it is possible. Their friendship, once filled with tension, was slowly turning into mutual respect. As the seasons changed, the town's wounds began to heal. New officers arrived with fresh ideas and honest hearts. The police department opened its doors to the community, inviting people to share their thoughts and concerns. Families gathered for events, children played safely in the streets, and trust began to grow. One day, Merritt visited the local school. He spoke to students about honesty, responsibility, and the importance of standing up for what is right. The children listened, eyes wide with hope. Alana watched from the back of the room, proud of how far they had come. At the end of the day, Merritt and Alana walked outside together. Do you think we've made a difference? Merritt asked quietly. Alana looked around at the peaceful town. Yes. And we will keep making a difference. They both knew the road ahead was long. But now, they faced it with courage, honesty, and hope. James Pierce's memory lived on, not as a story of betrayal and loss, but as a beacon of justice and change. And in the heart of the town, healing had finally begun. The town was no longer the same. The heavy silence that once covered the streets was replaced by gentle conversations, laughter, and the warm light of understanding. The journey had been long and difficult, but the people had begun to heal. Captain Ray Merritt stood outside the police station, watching as new officers arrived. These young men and women carried with them a promise of honesty, fairness, and respect for the community they served. Merritt felt a quiet pride mixed with humility. He knew his past mistakes would never fully disappear, but he was committed to doing everything in his power to support this new beginning. Agent Alana Pierce arrived at the station, carrying a folder filled with reports and plans for further reforms. She smiled at Merritt as she entered. Ready for the next step? She asked. Merritt nodded. More than ever. Together, they attended a community event organized by the police department and local leaders. The event was filled with music, food, and stories shared around small fires. People from all walks of life came together, breaking down walls built by fear and misunderstanding. Alana took the stage to speak. She looked out at the crowd, faces filled with hope and determination. My father believed in justice, she said softly. He believed that one person's courage could change the world. Today, we honor his memory by working together to build a better future. The crowd applauded, some with tears in their eyes. Later that evening, Merritt stood beside Alana, watching the town come alive with joy and friendship. A young boy approached Merritt, shy but curious. Are you the captain who helped fix the police? The boy asked. Merritt smiled gently. I'm trying my best. The boy nodded, then ran back to his friends, who were playing nearby. Alana placed a hand on Merritt's shoulder. See? Change is happening. Merritt looked around, breathing in the fresh air filled with hope. It feels good to be part of something better. The next day, a special ceremony was held to honor James Pierce. The town gathered at the courthouse to remember the man who had stood for what was right, even when it cost him everything. Alana spoke first, sharing stories of her father's bravery and honesty. Then, Merritt spoke, admitting his faults and pledging to continue the work Pierce had begun. Tears fell from many eyes, but there was also a quiet joy of feeling that justice was finally restored. As the sun set, Alana and Merritt stood together, looking toward the future. We can't change the past, Alana said, but we can shape what comes next. Merritt smiled. Together, we can make sure no one has to suffer like your father did. Their journey had been painful, but it had brought them to a place of hope and healing. And in the heart of the town, justice was no longer just a word, it was a promise. The promise of a new day.